coming back in again. We want to briefly go over the agenda, what we're trying to accomplish. Just by way of summary, this is part 2. We had about a month ago. This is a follow-up. Today we hope to continue to outline some of the areas that we can identify where we can work better together and establish a working list for future meetings with concerns are. A lot of these will keep at a very high level, not really try to figure any solutions today, but a lot of these, where the council at least is the legislative body. A lot of these are legislative level type policy issues. And as we come up with working lists, they may filter down to where the different divisions or department heads in each entity that work together. So we'll begin by reviewing those lists. We hope to be able to just compile those, spend about 20 or 30 minutes doing that. Our city elected officials and county elected officials probably go around this way. And if we will be able to compile those from the minutes on a master list that we can work off for future meetings. And then we'll move into some of the concern that I've had is when we are talking, and I've talked to both Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Radford on this, understanding the difference between area of impact, comprehensive plan, and the different processes are involved. And I still mess up, when I'm referring to area of impact, to call it a comprehensive plan. So we're going to basically just go through a set of slides that I've handed out. If you haven't got it, maybe extra copies here. We'll kind of go through those by the definitions and the sections where we're probably about to the room capacity because of spacing. So if anybody else comes in, we have an overflow. We're trying to stay within the limits if we can. And then we'd like to have a discussion. We'll go through and identify, at least from the county's perspective, some of the issues that we're seeing and have seen over the years on annexation policies, which deal with streets and roads and things like that. Again, we're not going to try to solve any of these, but this is just for identification. So with that, I guess where the city's on, and most of the city officials are around this way, Mayor, if you want to.
I'm going to ask if I can still continue to decompress, having come in on the run. And so I'm going to maybe go last on the city side.
Sure. When I brought this up last time, it just a concerning thing for me, and it's, I know this for all of us, is how roads going in and out of the city we're developing, and then we're back to 2 lanes, and then we're back to 5 lanes. I mean, we've got to figure out how to not do that, right? So we're not outside county boundaries, building wider roads, and what I'm talking about, going back and forth like that. I'm also really concerned about the sewer district boundaries and how we're going to address those issues about, because we know that eventually we're going to have customers that are in this city of Idaho Falls that are not served by our Falls sewer services. So, I just think we need to have that discussion and see where it goes.
Okay. Anything else?
No, see where this goes. I'll think it's something.
Okay. Yeah, you're free to amend and add to later on. So
I have the exact concerns that Councilmember Freeman had. I also, just because of my newness to the council. I recognize that our departments seem to work pretty well together. However, sometimes I'm asked questions that then I could go to maybe a city department person and say, why did this happen? It's like, I don't know, this is kind of how the county wanted. And that's a little bit at the end of the conversation, because I don't then feel like I have a kind of an access, or maybe it's just that I don't know who that access might be to call the county and say, hey, can you explain to me why this happened, without feeling like it's undercutting someone or undercutting someone's professional responsibility. And it's just an answer that I'm looking for, as opposed to trying to create any kind of disagreement or argument. But I don't feel comfortable in that space of getting answers. And other than the roads, which is number one, this other thing is number two. Number one, it's the road issue.
Which reminds me of something I failed to do last week, because part of the purpose of this is a lot of us don't get together and get to know each other on a personal basis, where we can pick up a phone and call. If you're comfortable, I'd like to pass a list around and have you put your cell phone numbers, and we'll share those with each other. So when you have a question like that, feel free to call any of us, and we'll help direct you to somebody in the county.
Okay, great.
So,
Karen, I'm comfortable with that.
okay. Go on.
All right. Well, I think many here for the council side know some of my issues that I work really hard on, and that is that I want to work really closely to preserve that difference between our city and the rural environment, and trying to do that with kind of create density within the city to make our efficiency so we can service more people without having to spread it out. So preventing sprawl is a big thing for me. And I think there's so many issues that are related to that between our two entities. I think we've improved immensely over time. From the time I've been on the council to now, I think we're seeing a lot more standards that are in alignment. We're seeing a lot of those things. However, we're trying to take on, like, maybe changing the subdivision ordinance or doing some of these things, but we should probably be doing that in conjunction. And so it will do very little good if we make something really harsh and then we don't have alignment. It's not going to probably help it. So that's one issue. I certainly have my concerns around how we deal with roads and how we deal with the right of ways, how we deal with those kind of things. And then another issue that we need to really discuss, and this council, at least Tom, Michelle, and I have really had this conversation a lot over the years. I think less so since the new three have come on, but extending services outside of our city boundary is something that was really discouraged for us, right? Something we looked at and thought, no, we don't want that to happen. Because of this conversation about sprawl, right? Like that was some of the conversation. We have a lot of debt in terms of infrastructure, just with the amount of miles we have now, right? For water lines and sewer lines. However, having said that, I don't see really how we solve the problem of standards if we don't maybe look at extending utilities. So there is something to be discussed, and if we aren't going to have, if we're not going to be a monopoly in city boundaries, then this conversation changes a bit. And so those are things that are all been things that we've discussed. And just personally, I'd love to see Parks and Rec. It seems like the county and the city have never, or at least it doesn't seem like we've had a lot of coordination there and my time in this area. And I'm not sure where those things really lie, because I think we have different missions in some ways. So, but I think just like everything, and I'll say this too, I'm very open to finding where we can find tax savings for the whole taxpayers by what we can accomplish together so that we're not repeating efforts. And that's a very scary conversation. I know that, because there's a lot of departments that care about how their departments run. But anyway, those are my thought processes. Sorry, it's a longer list.
That's perfect. We like it. A thorough list. Tom?
Well, first of all, I hope that the county planners realize that in the last 5 years or so, we really emphasize infill. We realize that we get behind the dollar, we distance ourselves from revenue too often by not taking care of infill. We really have a nice city. We have a nice county. It really is a nice county, and growth brings problems. I live out near 49 South, and so I quit using 49 South when the development started connecting inland, and so Crestwood, that's an issue. We're doing something there at Crestwood, I think, this year. But I think the roads are an issue. I think safety on roads, we got more cars, so we're gonna have more problems, but we gotta cooperate, do the best we can to move the traffic and the turnoffs safely. I think you realize on 49 South, if you go into Brookside and somebody's coming 50 miles an hour behind you and somebody's coming 50 miles an hour on the other lane, it's not a comfortable feeling. So I just don't go there anymore. And to make that a safe route, I think protects the other neighborhoods for not being so much traffic there. So traffic is a big issue. I think John mentioned the area of recreation and the library. Those are issues that we need to come to an agreement on. I mean, we're not the city. We are an entity that includes the county. We sometimes I think we say there's a county and the city. Well, we're both, and you are both. And so we share common problems, and we should have a desire to solve the problem. So I think the road issues are a big issue. We want the whole county to prosper, because the way we cooperate makes this a really nice place to live. That's the macro view. And so I think, you know, I go way back when we think, you know, there were problems with Hammond, there were bigger problems with the county, and it seemed like it was a trifecta war zone almost on disagreements. But I think when we come together, we feel satisfied. Now the sewer issue, the boundaries, where the sewer is built, you know, we want everybody to have access to sewer. Sewer is much better than septic tanks, in my opinion. So we need to work carefully and be cooperative. Try ahead of time to understand the issues before they hit the plate too quickly. If you know an issue's coming and you communicate it, then you sit down like we are now, we can discuss the issue. So I'll let it go at that.
Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna start with the one I think might be easiest maybe, and that is the E911 dispatch work group. And we got 3 issues to deal with: the funding of dispatch and the division of cost on the LEB between the paying of power and a rental of some kind, and reorganization of the MAP, the multi-agency board. And what I just want to be sure that we're all thinking together on this, so when this work group comes up with a proposal, the elected officials are ready to support it and understand it. So whatever, like, the commissioners need, well, you're probably right on that, but kind of keep the reports going, because it's been a year of work so far and we're not done. And then my second one is cooperation on waste disposal. And that is, city has quite a recycling program going, particularly with glass and other things that we collect in our bins. as well as what Western Recycling does, but what the city itself does, there must be some way that there could be an incentive for the residents of the city to be putting tons less into the landfill. And right now, that is not in place. So that's my second one. And if I had to dream, we would work on some kind of industrial level composting, so that waste doesn't go into the landfill also. And then I very much think we've got to look at cooperative funding for some of the selected parks where we know that the community as a whole uses some parks. Topless would be a classic example, and it's not just city residents that use it. Noise Park would be another example. And we have an opportunity to do some cooperation with Sandy Downs and the fairgrounds. I don't know, and I'm not giving specifics there. And then also I have some other ones. I think there might be some possibilities with the Infrastructure Act monies to do some cooperative things that we work on together, because that's separate from ARPA money. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this, the bill that was signed 60 days ago or so. A lot of projects, there's quite a bit of money that maybe there's some projects we should think about together. And two more. One of them is, we just approved last night the cooperative agreement on Holmes and 49th for intersection development, both entities. Having grown up in this city, those intersections have been a problem for decades as far as fatalities. And if we could do it once, we could do it again and again and again as the traffic increases on the south part of town. And my last one is, we're in this drought. Even with this snow, it's still going to be a drought. It takes more than 1 year to recover. We need to have some kind of policy on aerial fireworks. I'm finished.
We'll keep the fireworks out of this meeting.
That type of fireworks, we can keep out of the meeting.
Right.
So I hate to be redundant, but I think it's important for the commissioners to sort of gauge the level of interest, I think, of certain topics. So I hate to be redundant, but I'm going to be so on a few topics here. I was appointed last night to be the library representative for the city of Idaho Falls. So I'm somewhat informed on what's been happening in those conversations related to the library in the county. So I will be interested in pursuing some resolution, hopefully, to those issues that have come about. So that's going to be very important. As of course, as I mentioned last time, transit and the potential to expand our public transit system to county residents. The 911 dispatch working group and all that's happening there, I think, is very vital to our future success as the entities share responsibility in that. To speak a little bit to what Councilor Hally said, I think evolving our tone to recognize that all county residents may not be city residents, but every city resident is a county resident. And I think that we understand this in a kind of a unique way, because when our residents contact us, a lot of times they're contacting us about both issues, because issues in the county and the city, because they very much recognize their county residents. And so I think that we can, like I said, maybe evolve in how we speak about that. Because every penny that's spent in this county, whether it's a resident of the city or resident of only the county, the city taxpayers are still paying county taxes. So they're expecting a level of service as a result of that, right? So I think that, again, just recognizing that our city residents are also county residents in all of our matters continues, I think, to be a forefront of how we converse with each other. And I think will continue to be important as our city grows. I was also going to bring up our joint powers agreement from last night. I think that's a fabulous situation going on. That's an intersection that many residents have contacted me on. And like Francis said, we're doing it once, we can do it again. And really looking at those high risk intersections, I think would be very important. Lastly, economic development coordination. We're in a situation right now, our economic development coordinator recently moved on to a different position. And I'd like to better understand perhaps the economic development strategy of the county, because I truly believe that if the county is successful in economic development, the city, that benefits everyone, it benefits the city and the county both. And so finding perhaps new ways to coordinate on those issues, I think would be really important for us to pursue. And that's it. Thank you.
Mayor?
Thanks. I have mentioned before that we've gone through a similar exercise, and it was in 2017. And I found the list that was in my files. And the yellow, I believe, were things that we were most concerned about then, but I can't be sure. But as you look at this, whether you're looking at the yellow or the non-yellow, some of these things have already been addressed. And so we can go down and I'll give you what little I know about what the list is all about, and maybe still jog memory for some of you who were present when this list was put together. But the first one, fees and intergovernmental discounts. I'm not too clear on what that might be, what points that might be raising. And so it stands as an obscure line unless somebody wants to add some meat to the bones there.
I think this might have been referring to what we talked about as finding synergies where we save residents and get better. I don't know.
Okay.
And hopefully we can identify some of these, because I've seen some that if we could pick them out and put the meat on the bones, you know, in future meetings, and that's where we're trying to set the priorities of which do we tackle first. So.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure, other than if we all agree that we want to save money, what you know, what that would be there. So I would be inclined to maybe draw a line through that one. The next one, city county reciprocal agreements, guidelines and expectations, burials for indigents. Again, I'm not as clear what city county reciprocal agreements we might have been referring to at the time. But burials for indigents does seem like a separate issue, and I'm not quite sure if that has city relevance or not. And so, do they have any insight on that?
That was a discussion that I think Commissioner Radford at the time brought up, because the city charges for the putting the indigents in the ground, the burial, and he was hoping to get something that doesn't charge twice. But
Okay.
those are the type of things we get down in the weeds, then we don't get to the higher levels. So.
All right, so you're inclined to cross the line through that one. The third one is connectivity, and for us, that's a euphemism for fiber and broadband, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure if there's any collaboration that needs to happen there, because it's just a utility that we offer within the city. And if you're not in the city, you can do something else, right, with a provider. And so that may be where that is at this point. The fourth, so as you can see, I'm eliminating things, not adding. Another one, GIS information sharing. I know that the county's GIS staff are incredibly competent. I know we have some good folks with the city. And I know that we do share information, and I don't know that anything's broken there that needs to be fixed.
I think that one needs to stay on the list.
It does need to stay on the list. Okay, so I'll circle that one and we'll keep it on our list. CAD software. You know, I know that there was frustration at the beginning, and we've learned to live with some of the idiosyncrasies of the current CAD software. And I think that nobody was excited about having to expend money all over again and jump into something new, because they were frustrated with the old new stuff. But I think maybe, are we okay on CAD software at this point, living with it?
Again, let's just kind of identify, and then we'll kind of work through these a little later.
You could probably. group
What
that
I'm
one
trying to
with-
do, Roger,
you could
is-
Group that one with GIS.
Okay,
They're closely related, so.
I'm trying to even define what these are before I can even know if I want them on a list or not. So
And I fear about getting too hung up on defining, as I go through a lot of these. if we define them, they go away, but I'd like to get the whole list.
All right, well, then I'll just let this stand for what it is, and I'll add to it that I wish that we could, or I emphasize that collaborating on traffic is important. And I believe that recycling is something that we may want to also have some conversation about, as others have said. I do think that when it comes to federal grant money, we should be collaborating on synergies that we can create there. And I'll be done.
John?
Okay. First, thank you all. You brought up everything that's been on my pick list. And everything that's been brought up so far has been talked about in our meetings regarding issues that we need to get together on. And to me, it's great to talk about the need to be able to do something, but if we don't put a process in place so that that happens, so that when somebody calls you and you have a question, then there's a process, and you know that those questions you can go right to planning and zoning and ask the right person, or you can call me, or you can, so that there's a process, so that we know when somebody calls me and says, how come, and I say, oh gee, let me do some research, then I know who to call, right? And luckily with Parks and Rec stuff, I know, because that's, that stuff's working out really well in those relationships. And I think building those relationships is important, and I don't think that happens without face time. It's kind of like learning a sport. If you don't do ball time, if it's not touch time, you're not learning. And if we're not doing face-to-face time, and I think that's why our relationships have improved so dramatically, because we do FaceTime, right? We're in meetings talking about things. And I think that we need to continue this process. And that's FaceTime, whether it's individuals on projects or group FaceTime. I think it's important we continue that. I think it's important we put a process in place for all of the things that we need to work through, so that we can check off the boxes as we go through the process and come to an end result on mass mulching, which I agree. It drives me crazy that we're putting all this biodegradable stuff up here. There's lots of room up there, but isn't there a better use for it at our parks or our public? But so there's a lot of things we can work on, but I think we need a process so that we can do that, so that we can get beyond the lip service and really get some things done. And that's really all I just want to make all of this work.
So mine, I guess, would just be a couple, and that's, I would love to see us be able to complete a area of impact agreement this year. I hope that we can get all the work necessary to come together and get that completed and agreed upon and behind us. And then the other, I think, will help accomplish the first, and it goes to a little bit with what Tom was saying. I want to, I hope that we can, within our organizations, within our constituents, our public, convey a better message that the city and county are working together, because too often I hear the opposite. And so I think it starts right here with us right now, and I think we're doing that, but we need to make sure that word goes out. And so that old dialogue goes away, and there's confidence in the public that we are working together to get some of these really important issues done. We're not going to always agree. We're going to have different goals and some different objectives, and we need to respect each other for that. And just move past that to the next issue, and that we can find some compromise and or some agreement on. That would be my two.
Okay, thanks. In the next area, Austin, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, could you pull up the PowerPoint? one of those boomers and it takes me forever to go through all this technology stuff. Austin's gonna kind of run it. Maybe he'll share the screen. There he's okay. Okay, appreciate everybody's input, and I hope we can get, kind of take these, put them in a master list, and then basically divide them up in a series of meetings, whatever we decide the frequency is. I think we anticipated after, this initial organization meeting that the city would host the next one and be able to put the priorities on there. Some of them, like the mayor says, could be a simple explanation. You could bunch all those together, looking back at, some of the things like sewer district boundaries, the library. It might be, those are educational as much as anything to understand what's in place, what's there. So we could go through some of that. But one of the concerns, and I think we heard a lot about it in the last meeting, and that's why in my list of priorities, we're going to expand those as maybe an example of ways we can tackle individual issues. This has not come up with a solution. This is just observations. Part of this was the difficulty, I think I mentioned, of understanding the difference between the area of impact and comprehensive plan and how those are adopted and how they relate to each other. Because I comment a lot of times, interchange those words. I understand what it is, but trying to explain it to the other two commissioners, we kept bouncing back and forth, and Bryon would say, well, why can't we do that? Well, because that's in the area of impact agreement. So we thought it'd be helpful if you go to the next slide, Austin, of defining what these are by definition. Because I agree with Commissioner Reed. I think this has got to be one of our highest priorities because a lot of these other coordination issues, and it sounds like listening around the room that some of the views and philosophies of the city have changed, maybe at least worth exploring on services and things like that from our last negotiations. But the area of impact is a geographical area negotiated between the county and city, defining where the city is expected to grow. I think these are definitions pretty much out of the statute. An area of impact agreement is a written agreement between the city and county for the area of impact. It generally outlines the plans, policy, and development standards to be followed within the boundaries of the area of impact. Now, the comprehensive plan is a document adopted through a public hearing process that establishes a criteria to follow for future land use decisions to guide and regulate future development and growth within the jurisdiction of the governing board. And we'll go through the last area of impact was put together in about 2000, the year 2000. And so, it's changed a lot. But we thought we'd go through a series of maps and kind of show what's been happening there. Just a way of assessing where we are. And a lot of this has come up in the discussion with the Imagine IF. We've looked at that area of impact agreement, which I think is one of the most forward-thinking, comprehensive plan. See, there I go again. Comprehensive plan and thorough. I'll give kudos to Brad for the way the work they put in and developed it. It's just that the communication and the interface between the county, especially when it comes to a planning level and getting it adopted, are probably is one area we need to work on, because if you on that last slide, it says the comprehensive plan is a document adopted through the public hearing process that establishes a criteria. So the thing that's been missing over the last 20 years, and we'll show you some examples, has been the coordination so that the county process to make that valid. Because you have, to get that comprehensive plan to be a valid on on land in the jurisdiction of the county that's still even in the area of impact, it has to go through the hearing process with the county planning and zoning. And then they make a recommendation to us. They, Brad reached out, get us involved a little in the planning at a commission level. We couldn't do that because we were involved in a lawsuit. Our attorney said we probably had ought to be talking details of growth issues. That's been resolved. But at the level, and I think Brad is scheduled to go to the planning commission on the 25th. 5th, to present that. There was some concern, and this is where I think Commissioner Walker was talking about developing some criteria of communication of, for example, the communication on that would be to send an email over with a draft, and if they didn't hear back, say, well, they're okay with it. It's fine to say you're okay with it, but it doesn't have any enforcement. It hasn't been adopted by statute. So the
Commissioner
first,
Christensen, can I comment?
uh,
So are you saying that the city of Idaho Falls and the city council can't approve a comp plan
I'm not.
without the county's approval?
No, you can approve a comp plan.
Okay.
It's just that.
I just want to make that clear, because that's how I heard
Yeah.
what you just
Okay.
said.
Yeah, we'll clarify that, but the comp plan applies to the areas within the city jurisdiction. And unless the areas outside of the city jurisdiction have been adopted through the county. We'll show you the maps, and let's go to that next. There is a process, by the way, for adopting area of impact. And I don't think we need to go over that in detail. But go to that first map and maybe pictures say 1,000 words. So some of this is the area of impact that was adopted in about 2000. And currently, we've put a legend on this. The yellow areas are the incorporated city limits. The pink areas are in the area of impact, but under county jurisdiction. Those are the ones that would be affected by the comprehensive plan that needs to be run through the county planning and zoning. We've also, since it's been 20 years, since this has been revisited, the green shows annexations in the city outside of the area of impact that have happened since then. So that's just kind of a snapshot.
So Roger, what you're saying is the comprehensive plan would be valid for all the city residents, but in those pink areas is where you're saying getting it through your process and going through your board would give it validity.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
Is that what
that's,
you're saying?
Well, I think where I'm struggling is that, the Supreme Court in the Blaha case has made this extremely clear, that the county doesn't have jurisdiction
Right.
outside of its limits, and we don't have jurisdiction on theirs.
exactly. So
So,
it has to be a cooperative
well,
adoption.
I mean, we actually, it's my understanding that we could have two separate comp plans that actually don't intersect whatsoever. And what I'm hearing from you is that you said again that the comp plan needs to be run through the planning and zoning, but that's not accurate.
No,
Our comp plan does not
No,
have to be run through your planning and zoning.
you're misunderstanding. Your comprehensive plan can be run through the city.
Yeah.
The problem is, and we'll get into that in some of these other areas, is that the residents take a look at this map. And I think Brad has acknowledged in his report that some of these designations are aspirational. Well, aspirational, then when they come in and expect us to enforce it, because we're supposed to make our ordinances compatible. To get them compatible, we need to have that communication and development of it together. Or so that they are compatible, because our process requires it to go through the planning commission, just like yours does. And it would be well to have those issues resolved before you get there. Because the residents in the pink, I can't remember who mentioned it, but the residents come out and expect some things. They look at a land use map and say, okay, this is what I'm allowed to do. And we have it happen a lot of times that they come over to the zoning commission. They have certain rights that exist because they're still under county jurisdiction. We would prefer to see it coordinated so they're more compatible. That process has never been validated through a complete process. You know, it doesn't mean that the city can't go ahead and adopt theirs, but you know, it's going to be a little easier if it's done up front than running it by the county planning commission and saying, okay, here it is.
But Roger, it seems like it would be more logical if when we send you the draft, you give us the feedback. Because once it's final, it's final. It's too late to come to that point.
Well,
So you.
Well,
I
and
believe
staff,
you got a draft
is just,
earlier,
yeah, they did get a draft earlier.
And we
It's all
didn't get a
documented.
response as I understand.
But Jim, one thing that I think about this a little bit is it's a little bit like what we did with budget. Remember when we used to do budget and we'd have a hearing, but then we would never go back and visit what was said to us? Like, that's what I think is missing in that scenario. Like, if they're gonna have a hearing and they're planning and zoning, they need to listen to people and then give us the feedback of what they're listening. If you just did what you said, then it would just be the staff and there would be nothing.
Well,
And that's not the
Yeah, I don't
process.
know,
You're
I
right.
don't know, because I don't see why the draft couldn't go to the planning and zoning for
Well,
review.
So
well,
if
the
it's a
process
draft,
can
that's
be,
fine.
the process for the comp plan. It was laid out in several public meetings to council, a timeline, and to the public, and in surveys. And I mean, it's not as though we surprised anybody
Right.
with the comp plan.
And
And the timeline.
speaking of surprise, go to the next map, Austin. Okay, this is the plan that you've got proposed that you're adopting. You know, because we're not trying to litigate all those issues. We're trying to say, how can we coordinate better? Because when it's sent over to the planning commission as a draft, our planning commission looked at that, said, okay, we're waiting to see what the revisions they make and then come over and present. And that's simply all that is. You can either, you know, adopt yours, we adopt ours. But if you do it unilaterally, I don't think you get that joint planning that we're trying to talk about. You know, this had the Blaha case, we're well familiar with that. We understand all that. We're trying to find a way and a process to make the process work better. So we can come up and not have these misunderstandings at the end. One of those is a process for communication and working together, planning. We're just expressing to you what we need for us to be able to adopt something in there. And if it's something that the city has just adopted, you have that right. And nobody's questioning that. It's just that if there's differences, then they become more magnified instead of ironing them out ahead of time. Okay. So this is the map, and you can see on the comprehensive plan that the city has in the Imagine IF, the orange line is the area of impact. One of the concerns we raised with Brad, and this happened with the comprehensive plan 20 years ago, and one reason why we're suggesting a better way of communication, and it has improved, because I talked to Brad early on about that. Go to the next slide briefly there, Austin. No, oh yeah.
That's it.
This
This has the blue line.
Yeah, the blue line, we put this for illustrative purposes, you know, because the pink area is outside the city's jurisdiction in the area of impact. The comprehensive plan that you've adopted is the blue line. And that you're dealing with a number of acres. What got me thinking about this was last week when we talked about things that cause conflict between the two. It's when somebody outside of that area of impact goes and looks at a map and sees what has been designated, and then comes to one of the commissioners and said, well, I should be allowed to do this because it's on the map. They don't understand what the map is and the difference. All they see is on the map, and this is my piece of property.
So is that a source of a lot of conflict? I'm saying like numerous, is this a daily conversation that you're
I
having?
don't know if daily, but it's frequently
And
over.
at least
at the
And you're
land,
having a
so.
hard time resolving that? having a hard time explaining to the
Well,
resident?
The explanation, I think, lends itself to the idea that the city and county don't work together.
Because we've
because
got
all-
differing visions for what the land
Well,
use
on
is
different
that?
Visions, all we can do is say, well, the city passed that, but it hasn't been adopted by the county because it hasn't gone through this process. That's all we're trying to do is show you the process we need to go through if we're going to adopt either now or later. We're in the process of starting to work our comprehensive plan to make some changes over the next year. It would be good, kind of letting everybody know that so that the city can get involved in that, especially in this area outside the colored area, because you're talking an area that has been in the city's comprehensive plan, which you can tell people it's aspirational, but they don't understand it. They look at a map. You're talking about an area that's approximately the size of the city jurisdiction, 16,000 acres, and that surrounding area is about 15,000 acres.
So you mentioned process quite a bit here, and I'm definitely interested in hearing kind of, in a written format, what you would prefer that communication process to look like. Because I have a written document that shows the communication process we did go through, including trying to get on the P&Z agenda in August, September. So can you kind of explain how we didn't get on that agenda, and we're told that staff was gonna hear back from somebody if there were questions or comments?
Well, and there was a breakdown in communication, and that's one thing I think Commissioner Walker has talked about is he'll get together with Jim, they talk planning and zoning issues and they get together with staff there. But it seems like the communication, having a notification where they understand, it's nice to send it over and say, here it is, take a look at it. But I don't think the communication was there to say, this is a draft for you to look at and approve, because they understood it, that this is a draft. Okay, we're going to get together as you work out the final. The final, it's a little hard to consider something that's under the process of change, kind of like pass it and then we'll know what's in it. Because it changes. And I know when they sent it back, even after your last planning commission meeting, there were significant changes. It was sent back because of your planning commission.
That wasn't really my understanding. Francis, you're the.
I read the whole thing this summer, read the whole
Yeah,
draft.
no, but there was
Draft.
format changes for sure, like it looked different, but they were pretty much down to grammatical differences.
Well, I thought there was a substantive change on having to go back because I remember listening to that because you were adding area or impact fees.
Adding the area of impact fees, the study and that information to an appendix is the only substantive
change, right?
change since last summer.
But didn't you have to go back through your planning
No.
commission because you changed it?
Yeah, we had to go back to our planning commission
You
to
did
change
have
it,
to,
but
yeah.
I mean,
So your the impression of the county planning board was that, okay, there are changes going to be made. We want to see what those are before we sit down and work through them. And you did make the changes.
I'm only a little bit confused because, I know that Austin Black and Michelle Hagan were intimately involved in this process.
Right.
And,
Intimately involved, they were brought into 2 briefings.
and I think more than numerous conversations and emails and a lot of communication. So
Briefing implies that they only received information. I think there was collaborative.
they were amazing. Apparently
participation.
they were amazing to work with. We heard nothing but great things from staff about how great they were. So,
Yeah.
Maybe would help me. What's your goal, Roger? I mean, because
The
we're
goal
at
is,
the point, we need to
Yeah.
approve this because we got developers planning on it.
and that's up to you guys. We're
Yeah.
just trying to explain, that if you wanted it approved with agreed to guidelines, we're going to have to, whether you approve it now or not, that's up to you. You're right, the Blaha case. But to get that, what's designated, especially outside of the area of impact, that's a discussion because there's a lot of questions I could raise those questions here today, but that's not the goal. In fact, we've given it a lot more detail than I thought. The goal is to say this is what we need. We need to improve the communications to make sure we can adopt it. Otherwise, we end up with, well, we've got a couple other maps to show what's happened with the perception that the city approves it, sends it over, and the county's supposed to adopt it just like it is. There is a process that has to go through the hearings for the county to consider that at the planning level before it comes to us. That's what it simply is.
I think it's really important to understand that Roger's not saying this was wrong and you guys need to fix this or we're not going to play. There was, in my opinion, things were dropped on both sides. There was a disconnect that occurred on both sides, and responsibility for the fact that this didn't get reviewed through both planning and zonings, as it should have, through the planning and zoning boards, like it should have. That rests with both sides. And I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again. I don't really care how much mud there is out there right now. I want to get some boards down so that we don't have to step in the mud again. So that next time, when you guys run through your process, it comes through our process the right way. And our guys can say, yeah, we dropped the ball, because I can say, well, we got it to you. It didn't get past you. What happened? Okay. I don't know where that happened because there's no checkoff. There's no face sheet that follows the document from start to finish, and everybody who's supposed to touch it signed off and actually touched it. That didn't happen. And it may have happened on your side, but does your side show that the right people on our side touched it? I don't know, because I haven't seen it. But if we put a process in place so that whenever anything like this happens, when the patient is passed from me to Jim, the documentation goes with the patient. And when Jim gives it to Dr. Keller, the documentation goes with the patient. And the process, to me, it's not that difficult, and it's not, we should be passionate about what we care about, but we're talking about what's right for our citizens, and we should do due diligence in making sure that the process is complete all the way through.
So are you suggesting that when we come to a project that involves both entities, that we set up a checklist before we start, and then we
Well,
actually?
I think we could set up a basic checklist, knowing what you guys know, not, because I don't know. I don't know what the process is.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if the county has already written up a process for how they'd like to see the future comp planning
I think we need to
conversation
work
go.
together
Or is it,
on
or is
that
it your goal,
process.
is your goal for both sides to bring their ideas for a process?
Mayor Casper tried to get in something a minute ago.
Well, I guess I don't
Sorry, Mayor.
understand comprehensive plan. I thought that cities did comprehensive planning and counties did comprehensive planning. And you do that to be able to be prepared to shape the growth and understand the growth that's coming to you. I thought that the collaboration came with the area of impact agreement. And that's where you involve your planning commissions. That's where you have responsibility to make sure that you're on the same page. That is fundamentally a getting on the same page process. But I did not know, and I want clarification, that the county has to approve and adopt our comp plan, because I don't think that. I think the comp plan is nothing but a study.
Okay, and that's the way it's just been a study. We're looking at a process that makes it more formal than that, and to do that outside of the area of impact. Outside, it's great, whatever you show. It just creates a few issues if you have a resident out there that say, well, I think this is grown, that's fine. But that's not understandable by the public when they look at these maps. They don't understand that. The process we're trying to clear up is so that when you do get an area of impact, the zones, the growth area are compatible. Because right now in the pink, we have nothing formally adopted on the county
We do, we have a
side.
2001 area of impact agreement that still
Well,
holds.
I know, but we don't want to repeat that, some of the issues that got us to this area. That's what we're trying to change.
But so that's an area of impact conversation, and it's
No,
not
That's
a comp plan conversation.
the comp plan inside the area of impact is important. I mean, if you want to adopt what you think is a good comprehensive plan for the area of impact, great. If you want to have it so it has more effect and is adopted by the county, so we have more enforcement, that's the process we're talking about. And that's a departure from the way it's worked for 20 years. Austin, could you go to the next one? And I'll show you my point of reference. This is a plan that was prior to Brad, and Brad has been very sensitive and tried to work around this. 20 years ago, we read about this plan in the newspaper. We had no idea, weren't sent any notices. This was adopted by the city, and this went from the county line at the north, drove to the county line at the south. Now, as a separate jurisdiction, you can probably understand why that caused a lot of concern. Because you're basically drawing the growth for the major part of the county without even working with our planning and zoning. So they have to look at a map like this and try to decipher what the intent of that was in the beginning. The black line is changes from that because that probably adds another 8,000 acres to what we showed you in the current comprehensive plan. The black line is where you've made changes to that, some shrinking, some added. I don't think our planning commission has any idea why you're putting an area out in the boot or one a little ear up the north and changing. Those communications are a lot better if both planning commissions understand to come up with a comprehensive plan. And see, that's the difficulty. And I still try to get my head around it. Area of impact is one thing, that's a legal binding document. The comprehensive plan is the guidance within that. And it's better to have, at least in the comprehensive plan, that work together with, so the planning commission can understand it thoroughly before they make a recommendation to us. That's what we're trying to complicate. All these other discussions are getting us off in the sidetrack. That's the way it's happened before. We're trying to find a new way to do it. And that's going to require a process to make sure that our planning county staff and city staff understand what the expectations are of both sides.
So this is what my thought then, because we've spent over a year, intensive amount of staff time, intensive amount of outside money. We've spent a lot of taxpayer dollars on developing this comprehensive plan. County commissioners were invited to participate, and for whatever reason that I don't fundamentally understand, your attorney said don't talk to us. It makes no sense because we weren't talking about the case. We were talking about our comp plan. So I don't understand your attorney's advice, but for whatever reason, you didn't participate when invited. For whatever reason, Brad was not able to present out loud in an exchange with words to the planning and zoning. Instead, they said, just send us a memo and we'll look at it. For whatever reason, those things didn't happen. And so the collaboration that maybe would have resulted in a greater comfort level didn't happen. So now here we are, we're ready to, adopt it because we've spent all this money, we need to move on. We've got area of impact now, or fees, sorry, impact fees, not area of impact, but impact fees riding on it. And we really have to go forward. It would be, I think, awful to waste a year's worth of staff time. But maybe what could happen, because we aspire to excellent planning, is that this could be, well, first of all, this document, this plan is nothing more. I mean, you go through it. It's studies, it's history, it's information. And to boil it down and call the comp plan a map is not right. It's meant to inform decision-making. It's not binding. It's meant to inform decision-making. It's one of the boxes you check when you're making a land use decision. It's not a binding map. It doesn't represent a legal claim that a resident who misunderstood a map and made a purchase or a sale. It has no, they would get laughed out of court, not laughed, but we would push that case out because it's not binding. But it is a professional exercise that you need to go through, and that's why the law requires it. Perhaps this can be, the one that the city has developed can be useful in whatever the county will be developing as you go through developing your comprehensive plan. But maybe we really should focus on putting our effort into how we're going to, after you get through your comp plan, maybe that would be the time to talk about area of impact. And then we talk about, are there huge differences between what your professional planning and our professional planning identify for these boundary areas? Probably there won't be huge differences once the two processes happen, because most people can see the writing on the wall that looks like that's probably going to get bought up and developed, or that land's for sale. We can expect, subdivision there. We can probably expect that this is going to be a gravel pit for quite a while. We could probably, I bet there's not going to be a lot of difference. But right now, we're actually talking about having us toss aside a lot of work.
Okay,
To-
let me stop you there because you said that 3 or 4 times. We're not suggesting you toss it aside. We're not suggesting that you don't adopt it. What we're suggesting is because, to assume that everybody is going to be on the same page, I don't know that.
No, we don't know.
Yeah, and so, all we're trying to do, and let's pull it back to where we're getting too far in the weeds, is to try to avoid the things that we've done for the last 20 years that are not working that well. And we're trying to come up with a process that there's more communication, more cooperation, and at the county level, for us to have that input and for them to come back with a recommendation, we can't assume what they're going to do. But they need to understand what the thinking is by visiting with the city. That doesn't mean don't adopt this. That's not what we're saying. So let's not get off in that weed. Let me finish for a second here. Because we're getting off the track. The only purpose of this is to show what's required. And our desire is to make it more of an adopted planning document that's compatible with what the city wants. Those type of things can be worked out early in the process rather than later. I probably wouldn't encourage our planning staff to go through and adopt it and then come back and try to work out what's different with the city. I just soon see them involve the city in trying to make that compatible.
I think this is one of those areas where there's going to be some areas that we don't agree on, that the two planning organizations are not going to agree. I mean, there's a couple of things. One, you look at the 20-year ago map, that was what was adopted then. Look how far off that was, if you will. I mean, look what didn't happen. And so I basically, and I've told the other commissioners this, I give Brad a lot of credit for what he's done to the current one. As everyone knows, I've been really sensitive to not developing prime farm. And Brad cut out some of the most risk of offending farmers in other areas. He cut out some of the most prime farm ground in our county. And that's that large irrigated pivot, deep dirt ground out in the northwest area of Idaho Falls. And he pulled that back out of it. So, I mean, I appreciate that. There is still some of it, probably a section or so of it, that is my farm ground, that is outside that you have urban mixed use, I think, or the orange, whatever that was. Well, that won't happen in my lifetime. I can guarantee you that there's no growth going out there. No matter the price, no matter what it is, it just won't happen. And so, people look at that like me and go, well, that's not going to happen. And so you just wonder, well, I think that's an area where probably our planning and zoning and yours is not going to agree of the future use of that. The comp plans are not going to agree, but I don't think they have to.
They're based on willing buyers and sellers and what the market is likely to bring. It's not, there's no intent associated with it. It really is a planning exercise that is meant to guide decision making. There's no intent.
Yeah, the deeper you're in it, so rarely does somebody come to us as a developer and not just go forward with the project that they so desire due to the market. We just don't see that. But for me, one of the things
I don't disagree.
that, if you watch enough council meetings, I'm really good at is trying to get to the point. So we've listened, we've heard you. I totally understand where you're at here. 100%, I get it. What are you hoping to get from us today on this particular issue? A commitment to a organized process, or what are you hoping for?
We're hoping for an understanding of what we think needs to happen to get better cooperation, working together.
Okay, so
End of story.
listening to your perspective.
Yeah,
Okay,
all of these other details about what's the best prime ground, and everything. A lot of those discussions should be happening at the commission level, the planning and zoning commission level. Yes, these are aspirational and where we think they should go. But, you know, too often we get criticized for saying, well, you know what the city wanted that to be. Well, we didn't necessarily know why or that's what they wanted. And so something else develops there, and then there's a criticism. I just think getting the planning commissions at the commission level and the staff level to work together better to communicate, you know, whether it's a check off or whatever it is, to make sure, you know, that when the plan is sent over as a draft, they don't hear back, you assume that they're okay with it. Well, get something that says they are okay, or an explanation, because there has been a breakdown in the communication. You know, part of it is, you know, issues that there's been litigation, things like that. But there has been a breakdown of communication at the staff levels, and we're trying to reestablish that. So, you know, simply put, we're just trying to make it so that your desires on what you're putting together as your comprehensive plan are as compatible as possible in the area of impact. Because the area of impact, and that's where the overlap comes, the area of impact agreement puts some conditions on that. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're on the same page on growth instead of going two separate ways. Thompson.
Okay, thank you. I'm a macro kind of guy. Growth happens because of economics. Growth does not make everybody happy. We have tried hard to adapt infill and zoning changes that increase density within our city. We cannot predict the sprint of growth. None of us can. It happens when things are robust, you're going to get a lot of growth. And so the denominator, in my opinion, behind the comprehensive plan is flexibility. Because it happens so quick, you got to be flexible. A phenomenon I think that happens, that I'm a real believer that ownership has some rights. And we look at people that in the farming area, they come to us, they sell to a developer, the developer wants to be annexed in the city, it's continuous. We look at, you know, our fire department, our police department, we sewer and water, and we look at it. And I don't think we turn down that opportunity because we have a frozen comp plan. If it makes sense, we're probably going to vote to annex it. And I don't see how that can change. My final observation on communication. Communication's good because it helps with planning. But you get, the more you communicate, you also bring on more areas of disagreement too. So you have to have and understanding that disagreement happens. I learned a long time ago that when you're right, 60% of the time you're approaching being a genius. That came from my father. All that time, I thought he was telling me I was stupid. But as I got older, I realized what he was telling me, there's a lot of ways to do it. You understand, somebody has to be in charge. You're not stupid. There's other ways. And so that's all I got to say.
I'm just throw out a couple of things just that I have been thinking of. One is I really actually do agree significantly with getting the process in place. Even not at the expense of not adopting this, but just as you develop that process, some things that came to my mind. Sometimes it's just, what is the process? And sometimes the process is just, with the comprehensive plan, for example, it might be, we're just keeping you informed. And we know who that person is that we have to keep informed. I think other times it's we're seeking input and we just want to make sure that the box is checked to say, yes, we sought input. Or sometimes it is, we're seeking consensus. And so if we just kind of know where that is at, and I definitely think, area of impact is going to have to be consensus and who it is, and there's going to be this consensus. The one part that I have had trouble getting on the council with, or since getting on the council, is the comprehensive plan is aspirational. And we don't use it to deny someone that, a land use. And it's so hard because, to your point, people come in and say, well, it's in your comprehensive plan. And by name, it makes it sound like that's the comprehensive plan. So one thing that actually does kind of concern me is if the county and the city have the same comprehensive plan, I feel like that even gives it that much more sense.
It seems less
Like it's
aspirational.
even more legitimate.
Well, but-
Yeah, no, I would agree
but
with
see,
that.
that's what we want to hear, because we're often criticized, because if you look at the area of impact agreement, it says we will be compatible.
Yeah, so
And
of
that's
the area of
something that we
impact,
need to-
it would have to be, but of the comprehensive plan, right? Then if they're the same, then people say, you and the county got together and agreed.
But the area of impact language that was adopted 20 years ago said the county will make things compatible. Okay, so if we want more flexibility, that's an excellent point to negotiate in the next area of impact.
Yeah.
Because the desire 20 years ago was, we want the standards and everything, and even the land designations to be compatible. So we're not going off this way.
In the area of impact.
In the area of
Yes,
impact.
that's the one I also agree.
But there is a comprehensive plan in the area of impact that gets referred back to when it says we will make it compatible. So now,
Yeah.
you see where we're trying to come? Anyway, we need to.
But I just wanted to reemphasize that sometimes the process can just be, we're keeping you informed and this is the department, that, that it doesn't have to be laborious. Is
No,
all
I-
I'm saying is it could be
I agree
super,
wholeheartedly with
super
you.
easy,
And
depending on what.
to maybe help y'all understand, a couple of months ago, the mayor said that she'd sent me several emails and hadn't heard back from me. I came back and checked the server. My last email from her was in January of last year. Okay. So we talked about what email address. And then I did some searching and found two other email addresses, two other locations that I had in the system, bad email addresses for me. So anybody that was sending to those email addresses, they weren't going anywhere. They should have been kicked back, but they weren't. One of them's going to a judge that lives, I think, in Boise and comes over here part-time. But so they got lost. So if she sent me an email, said, how's this look? Don't answer if it's okay. I didn't answer because I didn't get the email. Right? So she assumes it's okay. So having the process can be as simple as just the feedback as, yeah, looks good.
Right.
No comment, just so you know that
Yeah,
you've got,
right.
just so you know
The
that. there's
defined
the agreement,
process.
That's all.
We've got to move on, but one more comment from the mayor, but I think you're starting to see what the frustration is. Because from our planning level, it's just like when they sent this over. You know, it's hard for them to read the minds of your planning people on, do we just want input? Is this a suggestion? You know, there needs to be some more clear communication. Yes, and that's our only point on this. We're getting to talk in eddies, and there's you know, one more segment here that we want to show that addresses a lot of the results of the way we've been doing things that I'd like to get to. So Mayor, if you had a.
I think that the urgency for having an area of impact agreement, a new one, that's very important. And if there are flaws in the old one, it would be that it elevated the comprehensive plan to something more than it should be. And we need to understand that that's probably a correction that needs to be made going forward. And that might liberate us from then having the worry about the comprehensive plan that we're adopting. There's nothing flawed about what we did, about the process, what's in it, or anything.
Nobody's saying there was.
No, but I don't want there to be a pall over it because of this confusing dialogue that we've had. Going forward, we've had this conversation about going forward and having better communication. We had that, I think 6-7 years ago. And somehow it still hasn't been fixed to everybody's satisfaction. So I'm not quite sure how to make it. One of the confusions is, do we send everything to commissioners? And some things is let staff work and expect that things will bubble up to commissioners and bubble up to council where they should. In the city, they tend to. Things that when there's a policy decision to be made, staff will inform council as to what's in play. Sometimes it seems like things don't bubble up in the county as much, that the communication tends to be horizontal with the city, and there's not that we have to do it twice. We have to do it once with staff, and then we have to do it once with commissioners. And if that's the case, and we know that, that'll be helpful for us to learn. But we've got to understand what's your love language, and what's ours. I don't want to receive everything that the county needs to collaborate with the city about, because I would drop the ball, because I'm that's too tight of a bottleneck. But we do probably need to decide that. When is staff appropriate? When is commission appropriate? When you want both? When do you want to be CC'd? And so if you could identify your protocols and we'll identify ours, maybe, and we swap, protocols, that might be the way to do it. But I would like to fix that, because I'm kind of tired of hearing we didn't know when. Gee, we tried. We talked to your commissioner. We talked to this. We talked to the staff member. And how come you didn't know? So it'll be good to get that one figured out and just. But in the meantime, I have to wonder, why didn't somebody just pick the phone and say, "Hey, you sent this to me. What do you want me to do with it?" I mean, that's what grown-ups do. They kind of solve those problems. So it's too bad that wasn't happening before.
And we can keep doing that, of course, but yeah, we need to move on with this. But the whole goal of this is based on the old area of impact. And if we need to update that, putting the emphasis on having the comprehensive plans be compatible inside the area of impact. And so maybe it needs to go back in the comprehensive plan discussion and soften that if we don't. But yeah, we got to move on.
I think that's an assumption, though, that you're making isn't necessary, that they need to be compatible within the area of impact.
It's not an assumption, it's language in the agreement.
And I'm saying, I think that's a crappy agreement, and I wanted a new agreement not to go there.
Saying
And
the same thing.
That's one point, and that's the point that I've been thinking, that's been rolling around my head, is that maybe we're putting the cart before the horse kind of thing here, right? Let's address the area of impact first, and then come back to the comprehensive plan. I mean, that seems to make more sense to me.
Yeah, because anyway, yeah, we're gonna go round and round on that, but Roger, yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Let me add just one last thing, because I fear that there's been a little bit of misunderstanding of our concerns. We're not concerned with you passing this. We understand that. We understand it's yours to do. And the thing I wanted to add is we've had multiple discussions here in this room in complementary to Brad for the plan that you have. I mean, these two will agree. We've said over and over, this is the best plan that we've ever seen Idaho Falls do. We're just very appreciative of all the work that was put into it. We understand how big of a job that was. So I just didn't want to leave it without you guys knowing. We recognize the good work that was done and compliment you on it. Wish you well.
But we've also come out with the impression that focusing on compatibility is a lesser priority, and we've tried to do that pursuant to the agreement. So Brad, the next area on the agenda, and I think it was brought up several times, is, and these are policies, annexation policies, we'll call them. And we just want to show, we're not going to get into a lot of the reasons why. Sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't. But basically show results of, because we're talking about the impact on roads and ways to better work together. And maybe we can kind of look at this as identifying the problem and then figuring out how to work. So I've got 4 or 5 examples that Brad, if you can start with the map of Ivywood. Austin. Who did I say?
Right.
Oh, Brad. Sorry, Brad. Austin, okay. These are some examples, and I don't know, I know you guys are working on an annexation policy for roads and things like that. But here's some areas and the issues it raised, that you guys have raised, several of you, the common issue about putting these developments onto these county roads. Could you zoom in just a little more? This is out on 65th South. You guys, I'm sure, are familiar with Ivywood. Development that was done. Zoom out just a little bit, Austin. Okay, this, the area in the light blue is what's annexed inside the city of Idaho Falls. The area in the yellow is still county subdivision. And I think you had a hearing on that where there was a motion for reconsideration by Mark Radford. I think that was very detailed on outlining some of the concerns, and I'd encourage you to go back and look at that. Not that you're trying to redo that, but we're trying to avoid ways of repeating. These areas, sometimes on annexation, the city will take to the edge of the road. Sometimes it will take to the center line. Sometimes it will come across and take the road. We're not sure what the policy is because it happens both ways. A concern we have, and it's something we've changed in our policy, is that area at the bottom of Stanford Street. I think that's a Karch. Is that Karchner or
It's
Rockwell?
Rockwell, yeah.
Yeah. What we've tried to avoid that we've learned over time is we've started making our developer improve at least their half section of the road to a 3-lane or a 5-lane standard, depending on what it is. Sometimes the developer will come in and start at the other end, and I don't know what the agreement there is if the developer's making the improvements on the road. But if they save that till the end and don't do the improvements on the road, then you've got a 500 to 800 house subdivision dumping onto a substandard county road.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Go back and see that the city is now annexed just recently, South Point coming down. So it's on 3 sides of that. That's one of those things. Hopefully, you're considering having the developer pick up to the center line, and then you've got a lot of that intersection already done.
That's right, but that is our standard, right?
Okay, go to the west and show 9th West.
Well, wait, I want to, this is
Okay.
not, so. This, just all of those houses that are frontage houses, right? Those don't generally come into the city, right? They sell the land behind it, and so the city never owns it's never annexed into the city, that frontage part of the road. So, for example, we don't have any way to get, we don't have a way to what is it when you take someone's property? It's not eminent domain, yeah. I
We
mean,
can't do it in
We
the
can't
county.
do it in the county, so they're not, their frontage to this, to the street
Right.
that we would really like to widen, but we as a city can't go to a county resident and say, our street needs to be bigger here, but you own this land and you're in the
Well,
county.
And that's what we're trying to avoid as we develop these, and that there will be another example.
Okay,
here
because
will
that
address
is, that's the
So
part that gets super confusing to me.
Here's another concern as you go to the west. Zoom in on 9th West and 12th West. This subdivision dumps onto a county standard division road that's been there for years. Somebody mentioned Crestwood is similar to that. When it develops behind, puts that pressure on. You know, to get access permits, you know, we're requiring the county to access roads, certain improvements be made that we didn't do, like with Crestwood. Of course, Crestwood was a different deal because Sunnyside, the individual there, the only way he would give us the property is if we had a written agreement not to improve it in front of his house. That was Kip Manwaring.
Oh, yeah.
But a possible solution, don't want to debate the merits of it. We've got two little sections of road, one about 870 feet. I think that's the 9th West, one of 535 feet. But to make that a safe standard, possibly part of the development agreement, which I think we heard in the hearing, would be to require the developer, which I don't think is unreasonable, to improve that access on and widen that, get it to a safer standard. But this has a variety of things because we agree that property on the one quadrant is still in the county. That's where the cooperative agreements have to come in if you want to widen it. But we hope that there would be an opportunity taken to give the developer of those, which would be, as we have developed over the years, progress, is to get the builders to do that. One example of that is on the roundabout at Iona that the state is now looking. When Karshner came in, we required them as part of the improvement. This was before the state was going to take that roundabout, turn it into a light. We required the easement and them to build that portion, which would be the width in front of their property around the corner. So if we ever had to do that on our own, that's already done. Okay. For sake of time, let's go to the next one, Austin, which is Holmes and 49th South. Well, let's go to 15th, the 5th. That's Holmes. This is the intersection that you guys have adopted the. Okay, the consideration we tried to put in for this last year, and I'll show you the differences and maybe the way we can avoid the situation up on Holmes and 40. Let's see, 15th East and 49th in the future.
The St. Clair and 49,
Yeah.
is that, okay?
Because we couldn't apply for both. So
Dating yourself when you call it St. Clair.
What's that?
You're dating yourself when you call it.
I know,
St.
Hit
Clair.
Road, St. Clair, St. Leon.
It was presented to our road rich staff that, well, the county can do one and the city can do the other. The problem is with the reason we didn't want to agree with that is that the budget limitations are pretty much going to be met by the homes. Anyway, the one where we have the 3 deaths, that's the easiest way to remember.
But we've had fatalities at the other one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is a higher priority because of it's not as developed yet. So, our request was to just include that one and put the other one off, and we'll show you what's happening out there that maybe would avoid that. The eminent domain, zoom in on that intersection, Austin, with the property owners. So you do have some concern on eminent domain if we can't negotiate something with them.
That's the wrong, intersection.
It
That's
doesn't
the,
look right.
that's 40, that's the St. Clair and 49. Oh, it's a-
Go
yeah.
down west.
It's a mile.
You just gotta go a mile west. Yeah. There it is, right there.
Yeah,
That other one was easier to work with.
I know.
See,
Yeah, that's.
That's it right there.
see, on that intersection project, we do have the right of way down the part that's been annexed. A good part of the west, the impact on that is coming from South Point, and it's putting the traffic on there, which creates the problems that we're talking about with these urban densities, which I think is one of the very good parts of the plan you're talking about, is getting the densities in the urban areas a little better. But it does put additional impact. This project is going to require some right-of-way acquisition. Okay, if we look at it and, we're very careful about the eminent domain, and 95% of the time it can be negotiated. And we've been successful in doing that. I think, can only think of one time that I've been, and it was that we've had to use that, was out by the Maverick roundabout in Lincoln. We had to use it against Riverbend because they had a manager that was a little difficult. And anyway, we ended up getting that. But most other times we've been able to do that. If these had been corners that were developed in the subdivision, like the southeast one, you could have got the extra right away. We could have, or if the city did, okay, depending on whether it's in the city or not. But that drives the cost up. Now go back to the one you had before, Austin. Okay, this is the other intersection, and the city is annexed up to the lighter colored areas. And I don't know what the development agreement requires. This is one.
They're gonna have to put in
They're gonna have,
their half of the road, yeah.
okay, if they have to put in their half of the road, I mean, it hasn't been annexed, which is part of, whatever your policy is gonna be. But
There's an irrigation ditch there too. They're gonna put in a pipe.
okay,
Yeah.
so see, that takes care of 1/4 of that, so that this project becomes a lot easier to accomplish. I'm assuming the one straight to the west will eventually annex. By the time it comes to that, you maybe have half the project built. I'll go a little bit farther to the east on that Providence Point one. Another concern that came up is Providence Point 1. You see the red lots. Go a little farther to the east where the red lots were. When this was developed, it accessed onto the county road. To get an access permit, Lance required the improvements. So they had the developer that was in a separate agreement. And they did build that, but then they came in with the next subdivision. And if you go to the west, you see the next proposed subdivision. And they put that in as a safety only access. But when they brought the traffic study in it, they showed that it was going to handle 500 cars a day. Lance was not willing to sign off on that for obvious reasons, because it's a substandard width road and the spacing is too close. If the city wanted to do that, you could annex the road and accomplish that. We didn't feel good about that. But these are examples of what sometimes the perception of being hard to deal with one way or the other come from. But the point on this is this intersection, there has been a death on that, a good friend of ours. And but a lot of that can be accomplished while we're doing the other, if we look far enough ahead. In the area of infill, let's go out to 17th North and Helix.
Here we go.
We're kind of working our way around just to show some different examples. This is out that subdivision by the soccer fields, and it dumps onto 17th North. see kind of a couple little fingers that they came in and annexed the road. But these two lots, we're talking about trying to take care of the islands. It might be helpful to find a way to take care or avoid making new islands. These two lots have a division right still. They have, the right to build that in the county. Apparently, when they approached the city, they were willing to let them hook on Helix. But the cost was, according to them, was like $200,000. I don't know what the plans are going forward, but if we do develop that, because there's some proposed annexations to the north, all of a sudden we've created a couple of little islands. And I don't know the best solution to work through those and try to make sure those end up in the city as a city lot.
Can I ask a question on that? What is the county's philosophy on subdivisions in the county? Has it changed over the years? Is it still the same as it has been?
Or what?
Like, there are several subdivisions in the county. Is the current county policy like, oh yes, we're going to allow county subdivisions, or is it, oh, we're really trying to push
We're trying to push,
subdivisions into the city, but
We're
here's the
trying to-
criteria to be
Yeah.
allowed to do county?
we're trying to push them into the cities if the city will accept them and they can find a way to do it. Otherwise, they still have certain rights and they are allowed to develop that within those certain rights. We would prefer, if there's a policy that will work getting them into the city, and I know there's a cost of extending. We're not going to try to solve that. But these subdivisions, both on these sides, were put together years ago.
That's
before
what
we even
that's
talked
what I
about-
was wondering. So that is a change then in philosophy
Yeah,
for the county that you would prefer to just. let
because
the
you're
city-
looking at the intersection down there when you dump.
Oh, yeah, I see, yeah,
Dump the property out or the traffic out on that road is a substandard road.
for
And
sure.
if you look down, and I think they've talked to city staff about, there's a strip in there owned by the county and part of it's by City of Idaho Falls, and they haven't annexed it. Now, those are the discussions that need to be had at the staff level, but as a legislative body, help us develop the plans, because, one of the city has a service box and it's in the right of way. And the developer came and said, we don't want to pay the taxes on that. Well, if we take it for taxes, you have to put it up for auction. Somebody could buy a spite strip and it'll be a mess. Those are some of the areas we would hope would be better coordination.
Roger, can I bring something
Uh-huh.
up? And, we're considering doing impact fees,
Right.
and if we do them and you guys don't, I'm afraid that it's gonna push more people into the county. And so, I think that's important that we coordinate on that too, is that if we need to know if you guys have an appetite for that.
I would like to talk about impact fees a little bit.
Yeah, real quick, if I can make a quick exit.
Okay. All right. Because I was over to the property tax symposium in Boise last Friday.
Mhm.
It was put on by the assessors, IAC, and one other group put that on. Taxpayers of Idaho. And I came away from that feeling strongly about impact fees. And I've been saying that for 2 or 3 years in here. I keep hearing from Roger that state statutes make it impossible. And so I had Senator Cook, Senator Lent there at the table with me, talked to them about it, and they said, hey, we'd be happy to go look at those statutes if we need to loosen them up a little bit to give you a little bit more freedom in imposing and using those impact fees. We'd be glad to look at.
There's certainly a way to help with property tax.
I think that it's a great way to help, but I read through every statute and it appears there may be some problems. And one of the concerns that came up was if you impose impact fees, that's just going to raise the cost of the houses in that area, right? that's gonna float up all the houses. And so Seth became concerned about that, that wasn't a good way to help solve property tax issues. We were looking more at some type of an excise fee or something, but I'm happy to look at that with you because I believe that this new growth has got to do a better job of paying for itself.
Right. And I just had this conversation yesterday with Frederickson about, and we were talking about the, we have a table with what it's gonna cost, that we're presenting. And that was my comment at that time yesterday. I said, if we do this and the county does it, it's just gonna push more people, more developers towards the county. Right? Because the developer is the one that's gonna pay it.
Well,
And he's gonna recoup his money in the end. I mean, there's other problems with it too, but I'm just saying, if you guys have an appetite to do it, then it would make it a lot easier for us.
we certainly don't want to see more growth go into the county that could be built in the
Good.
city. I mean, that's the last thing that I want to see.
Right.
But I think because of what I read through in our discussion with Seth, it could be possible because of the statutes right now to do much as far as impact fees.
Well,
Commissioner,
That we would not, it would make it difficult
I would
as much as I'd like to.
I would just add that we had a presentation and the numbers that were presented to us were shocking. We had that very conversation you just had, like, wait a second, we have a housing crisis.
Yeah.
We have a problem with the cost of homes now. And so that got sent back and they found some solutions that make this a bit more tenable. So we'll see where this all goes, but yeah, if you could help us find a way to make that some flexibility at the legislative level, state, I would suspect most municipalities and counties would be in alignment there to try to figure out how to do that. Because I don't think, I mean, the number they threw out to us was $7,000 a home.
You were down in the $4,500 range now for a single family home.
And so now we reduce that much more, but yeah, if you went through and did everything we could have made every house cost $7,000 to $8,000 more in the city.
And that was a concern that came up is when you do that, it will also naturally float those others up that are already on.
Yeah, valuations will go up, which means their property taxes will go up. So we are concerned about that. And if, I think we were all open to anything else other than impact fees if there was something otherwise, but we need to do something because the growth is happening now.
Right. You pay now or you pay later.
I want to really weigh in on this because I am super passionate about this because all of this is the exact same conversation that I've been having is the impact to the city is definitely coming from pressure outside of the city too. The reason that we have to improve Woodruff and 17th Street is not because of the density that's suddenly popped up around 17th and Woodruff. It's like, oh, it's all of the traffic coming into town. And so if we start doing impact fees and then people build in the county or in the other municipalities, we're not going to relieve any of the impact on Idaho Falls. The impact is going to become equally as great. So anything that you're doing, I'd love to be, if we are just in step on this one as growth comes in. I'm super happy to hear that you're not looking at developing subdivisions in the county and getting those really pushing through, because I think that's, once again, puts us at a real disadvantage. But I'd be super, super happy to get on so that we become lockstep on what that
But
is.
also be aware that, there are certain areas that are already zoned. that
Sure. Oh,
they
yeah.
have the
Oh,
right
yeah.
to-
I totally understand that there are landowners, right?
See, the impact fees discussion is one of the reasons that we have concern on the comprehensive plan that included those and the requirement of the current area of impact that says we will be compatible. I'm not sure if you adopt an impact fee, the way Commissioner Reed explained it, we could find a way to legally do it. And that automatically creates this situation where it looks like we're not trying to be compatible. We may not be able to be compatible. And that's where I think we need to back up and maybe start with the area of impact agreement, because that's the exact point that kind of led to this, is when Commissioner Reed said, well, it says we will be compatible. we will be compatible. Well, how can we have an agreement where if you pass something, we're required to do it? You know,
That's the way I
basically
interpret it,
the law.
but when I went back and reread it, it says
Yeah.
the county may.
Right.
So it's not quite as strong. It's like,
So anyway, that's the same thing. The area of impact, or I mean, the impact fees, I don't know. That's gonna be a complicated deal.
Yeah.
We feel like a dog chasing its tail on each of these issues.
Need a crystal ball.
What we're trying to identify is the early actions we can take where we can to avoid some of these by getting the developers to do it where they touch the public roads. Okay, Austin, let's go to 33rd North. We'll pick some of these because they're just very recent annexations. Okay, this, zoom out a little bit so they can see kind of the general area where this is.
That's,
This to the bottom of the
Louisville.
screen. That's Louisville Highway,
yeah,
33rd North. You can see the LDS church up there. The road is going, I think it's 5th West, going out to Sage Lakes. And this is one that was annexed by Bachman Kingston. I think they own the road across. When you're looking at that, and if that develops, that road is pretty much a gravel road and not nearly the standard that would even come close. That's one that was annexed up to the edge of the road, even though the same property owners, I know they did annex the other side. That's one, you know, encourage you to take a look at, have the developer improve that road before you build, because I think some of that's for high density housing. And I think there was a letter sent over by our public works prior to the annexation recommending that. It didn't happen. But those are the type of situations that we would like to see avoided. Otherwise, we're back here talking about these substandard roads with a lot of traffic on them. And then the last one we had was 5th East and the one on the north end of Sage Lakes. 65th North. Show the annexation where those two little fingers come out on the.
It's just currently proposed, so it's not on the map yet.
Okay. It's a proposed annexation.
Yeah, it was a December item, I believe.
Okay, I mean, if that's coming before the council, we probably had not to go into that. You know, but we will send our comments in. And again, it has to relate with the annexation of the roads in general.
So you'll see the paper that I intended to pass around. If you could finish that, going that direction. We've got, this is our statement of annexation principles that we adopted after we had a conversation with the county when we were still struggling with letting our previous area of impact negotiations languish. But this has some language there that Brad has brought forward with respect to roads, changing a little bit of our goals there. So,
Particularly category C.
Yeah, right, right. See, these are the type of communications that I think are helpful as they're shared.
I'm sharing it now. This is new.
I know, but Brad, you know, if Brad could bring this up when he's talking to the planning, so they understand what the proposed policy is.
And this is not policy, right? This is I want to, just as a policy maker, suggest that we shouldn't rush to developing our own policies above and beyond what the law says. And I kind of want to make it clear that our policy is to use the law when we're dealing with these things. And if the law gives us that flexibility, because it'll give us more flexibility than if we constrain ourselves further. But these are principles that we intend to abide by unless we encounter a situation that's unique or whatever, and we have to reassess. This is aspirational.
Well, yeah, ultimately, council will vote on individual annexations, how council's gonna vote.
But I'll say, as we got involved, it was kind of always told to us how we should look at this. And I think if this is the policy, that council members generally will get aligned.
Well, we've had a
We
lot of
worked
participation
together.
in this, yeah, we participated a lot in this, so.
Well, that's the purpose of showing you some of the annexations and some of our concerns, you know, so that you can understand what we would like to see happen.
And so this is an edit that hasn't been adopted yet, or an amendment, or whatever you want to call it. We haven't applied it. We wanted to hear your thoughts, and we have.
Looks
We have
good to
them.
you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, give us a chance to review it, and we'll send you our thoughts.
I agree with Seth that initially the cost with impact fees will increase the cost of the house. Long term, the impact fees affect the cost of the land, and the land will be cheaper. Because the impact fee is a cost it's attached to the land, and the land will be cheaper. So I think it could be a wash there, but not immediately, but long term it would.
Okay, well, we've
Quick thing,
okay, sure.
just to add to the list, now that we've had this conversation, right? Would there be a way to work with the county to have what we're talking about, the process here, for us to gain the right of way for those county properties that sit on the roadway that the subdivision sits behind? That would be something just to add to that very first list that we were talking about, what were the issues. That would be one that, for me, having had this conversation and seeing all of this and putting it back in my mind, I would like to have the county think through that possibly, that, yeah, this would be the process that we would use to help the city gain those rights of way. Otherwise, we're just always gonna have wide 5 lanes, back to two lanes. I mean, it doesn't just like narrow.
Well, it's not
It
just
goes
dangerous.
5, 2, 5. So that would be something to add to the list is.
And sometimes it's 2 on one side and 1 on
I
the
know,
other, and
it's
then 1 on both
There
sides.
is, it's super weird, but
It's not just cars that's dangerous for you, it's your
No,
pedestrians
it's
and
pedestrians,
bicycles,
pedestrians.
you know, the-
yeah,
Walker, so
but yeah, so
Like
that
in
would
the
be
road,
one.
back off the road.
Belong in an area of impact conversation and in that agreement.
Cards without flags.
Yeah, that there would be that process for how we obtain help to get that right away, because we can't do anything. If they say, no, we're in the county, you have no influence.
I was thinking that when you brought that up earlier, I don't know why there should be some type of an MOU.
We'll put that on the list.
Yeah.
That's the short answer.
Yeah. It goes on the
Well,
list.
but it needs to be done sooner than later. Phil.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that,
that's a big one.
yeah.
Because we're getting more and more of them all. the
Perhaps
time.
it will be easy. That'd be nice.
It used to be just a couple, now we're getting, it's starting to be a habit.
We have another meeting scheduled.
Yeah, we have to go.
Okay.
Well, anyway,
Thank you.
so when is the next meeting?
Yeah, that's what I meant, is this happening.
I think that's up to you. I mean, we've completed our introduction and kicking this off. The next
When do you come play in your
Is
place?
Yeah. it's our
Frequently,
turn.
what you envision.
Uh,
Quarterly, 3 times a year, 2 times.
Well, I think quarterly would be the minimum, but that's up to the council, because we've always heard that the council is busy.
My preference would be monthly until we could get some of this
That
crossed
would be
off
my
the list.
preference, but, you know,
I'm supportive as well. I know we're busy and I know we have lots, but I think this is pretty critical stuff.
But that'll be up to you guys, in scheduling the next meeting. So when do you want to have the next meeting?
Well, you know, we have to do a doodle poll, check everybody's schedules and figure out something. It's not something we can decide in this meeting, I doubt.
It'd be nice if we could set it on a
Recurring
long-term
basis.
so that we
We
know.
did that last time. We just picked a day that everybody felt like they could. and
I hate Fridays.
I know Fridays are my terrible.
I am not inclined to go with monthly. I do think that there are things that staff can do in between meetings to help to keep the process moving, and so that we as policymakers can identify, areas that are fruitful for work and let the work happen in between. But if this is January and we want to do quarterly, then why don't we look at April? Unless you want to have another one fairly soon, and then from there, go quarterly after that.
Well, I think from our standpoint, we prefer more frequently, but we're gonna leave that up to you guys because you're set to schedule the next meeting along with the agenda. So we'll let you guys work that out, send out a doodle poll if that's the way you want to go.
2 a year,
Every couple
or
of
every
months.
2 weeks.
No, every 2 months. I do 6 a year.
Every other month. Maybe that'd be a
Yeah.
good compromise. I agree. I think monthly might be too often.
Could we compile a list from the notes and pass it around and have it prioritize what they think and then maybe attack the next meeting, the top 2 or 3 of those and not get overwhelmed? Because there's some that are, I think, are time sensitive. The right of ways probably about the top of that list, and whatever we make the.
Can I ask
We're-
one question?
we're-
And you don't have to give me a full answer or, is the county interested in extending utilities into the county still? Or is that something that's on your radar or?
That's something we pushed real hard for that last area of impact agreement that was basically city wasn't willing. Already passed a policy. And that's what the last area of impact developed around. We came out that the policy had been adopted about a year before we got together with that. And there didn't seem to be a will on the council to review that and change it. And that's kind of when the area of impact died.
Short answer is
Yes, we've talked to Ammon about doing that, with the agreement to annex it, if they're hooked up and extended outside the service. But that's going to be a policy change on your.
I understand, and it's becoming apparent and to a couple of us at least, and I can't speak for everyone, but that especially with the wastewater stuff, is that we gotta get ahead of it a little bit, or things are gonna develop differently in the kind that we want them to. And this is just me talking, it's not anybody else. So I think I have a willingness to hear that conversation, but it's not gonna be a carte blanche kind of a agreement that, we'll do it wherever. It's gotta be on a case by case basis and even consider it, but I mean, I'd love to, see you guys take advantage of a lot of our stuff, but I think it would help people in the citizens have a better quality of life. I mean, we're talking, fiber and all kinds of stuff, right? If those things ever happen, and that's probably doubtful that that's legal for us to do outside the city, but anyway.
That's something we can't answer. You're gonna have to speak to the gentleman back there in the white shirt.
Yeah.
Nothing much you can do.
Are there any dates in the latter half of March that are blackout dates that are county meetings or travel that you have?
Well, spring break is the 19th to the 27th, so.
March.
St. Patrick's Day, 17th.
So, just pick it.
That's green beer.
I think
I will. I just wanted to know if there were any blackout dates. That's
Yeah,
all, so that I can avoid those.
The doodle poll thing, I think works. It doesn't mean you have to have 100%, but get the majority here. And then decide what topic you want to tackle next.
I'll work with you on that.
Yeah, you talking about March.
I've got your email fixed.
Yes.
March is better than April.
And one of them is on our list to contact.
Oh, yeah, that's
Contact button.
great. Yeah, I'm like, that's how I.
And nobody,
I just realized that, so I-
why didn't you come? You know?